1,150 sailors died the night that HMS Victory vanished in 1744. To this day, it remains the single biggest Royal Navy loss of life in the English Channel. The location of the wreck remained a mystery for nearly 300 years. It was discovered in 2009 by Odyssey Marine, and I've had the great privilege of diving it on 2 separate occasions. During this video, you'll see lots of these stunning bronze cannons, timbers that formed part of the hull, and even, very sadly, some human remains. You'll also be able to track my progress around the wreck mound, and, in a world first, I'll reveal that many of the cannon seem to have been moved off the wreck site by human intervention. But come on, I hear you say. Everyone knows where HMS Victory is. It's one of the most famous ships in the world. It's in Portsmouth Military Dockyard. It was Nelson's flagship at the Battle of Trafalgar and has been in continuous military service ever since, preserved for the nation. And of course, you're absolutely right. But we're talking about 2 different ships. The Navy liked to reuse names. So when HMS Victory was lost in 1744, they built another one. And that HMS Victory became the one used by Nelson at Trafalgar and that is still afloat in Portsmouth Dockyard. So this is me on the descent. We're about 45 miles southwest of Plymouth, in the middle of the English Channel. As you can see, it's pretty dark. I normally have my video camera mounted to my helmet, but this dive it's different. It's actually on the front of my scooter with 2 video lights, and the reason I've done this is because I want to get the best possible footage of what we find at the bottom. You can see we're getting close. Not only are there 2 strobes flashing away in front of me, but I've also had occasional glimpses of torches from divers who were already on the wreck. Those of you who've seen my other videos will know that what's going to happen next is I'm going to attach my strobes onto the shot line. Because this means I'll have to let go of the scooter, that means the scooter's just going to dangle round in mid-water, filming not very much. So it isn't going to be the greatest bit of video footage. I just ask you to hang in there. It won't take me too long to get those strobes fixed. I'll then pick up the scooter again and we'll start onto the wreck. There you go, my strobe's fixed and I'm on my way. I promised that you'd be able to track my progress around the wreck mound, and that's what I'm going to use the multi-beam image in the top right hand corner to do. The green area is the seabed, and then the yellow and red are areas that stand up above the seabed. The dots show my snail trail around the wreck site, and the star is where the shot is located. That's where I currently am. Like any wreck dive, it takes you a while to get your bearings, and that's what's currently happening. The mound is off to my right hand side, the flat seabed to my left. I'm just scootering around, mainly because I've seen the other diver, and I'm heading towards them to see if they found anything interesting. As I get closer, it's clear that they haven't, so I'm going to turn round to the right and move up onto the wreck mound. Both times I've dived HMS Victory, conditions on the bottom have been awesome. There's less ambient light on this dive, but frankly it's still pretty good. The visibility is easily 5 metres plus. As I come up on the wreck mound, the first thing I see is these 2 cannon. They're absolutely incredible. 3.5 metres long. These are some of the main armament that HMS Victory carried. I remember them very well from the first dive, not least because of the fact that they're completely parallel to each other, which isn't something you'd expect to happen during a normal sinking event for a ship. You can also clearly see that they've got some sort of lifting strops around them. These guns have clearly been moved here and placed in the position that we can currently see them. The big question, of course, is who did it and how did they do it? And I don't think we'll ever know the answer to that question, although there's plenty of people willing to speculate. About all we can say is it must have required a pretty impressive piece of technology and probably happened a while ago, because the lifting strops have rotted away, and in many cases they've actually come off the guns and are to the side of them, as you can see on that left hand gun. So where are we on the wreck site? These pair of guns are to the western side of the main mound, as you can see on my diagram. I'm now going to move up onto the mound itself. This is all bits of wreckage. It might not look like it, but you can see timbers and you can see ballast that has been filled in with sand. None of this is natural rock. One of the great things about diving HMS Victory is how much life there is on it. We've already seen crayfish and lobsters. You can see a hermit crab we've just gone past, and all the tiny fish that this is some sort of breeding ground for. But then in front of us here, that's a cannon sticking in a rather jaunty angle out of the seabed. You can also see that concretion has come off it, and you ask yourself, what causes that concretion to be removed? Anybody who's tried to get it off will know that it's a very difficult thing to achieve. Almost certainly, I would say, that concretion has been removed by something rubbing on it, such as fishing gear or, ropes of some variety. There's another cannon off to the right hand side, and once again you can see a big edible crab there. Loads and loads of life, and I think this site is quite heavily fished and quite heavily trawled, and also gets potted as well, purely because of all the marine life. Looking here, you can see some sort of piece of the ship in front of me there, and you probably also saw the bottle there. That bottle isn't original. It's a piece of rubbish that somehow ended up on the wreck site. You can see I've put my scooter down, and the reason I've put it down is that I'm pulling whatever that brass thing was out of the sand, so we can have another good look at it. Doesn't really help to identify what it is, but I guess somebody who knew something about these kind of ships would be able to give us a clue. Looking down there, there's another cannon, nearly completely buried, and I think it just shows how much stuff there is in this wreck mound. There's some timbers, a load more timbers, and it seems to me that these probably get covered and uncovered as sand moves around. Otherwise I just don't see how they could have survived being underwater for this long. As I move up here, there's another cannon. I did promise you lots and lots of cannons on this site. There's a little conger eel there, just underneath it. Once again, you can see the concretion has been removed from this, and only on the top, which to me is the kind of place that you would imagine ropes running or catching. Now, the interesting thing about this cannon is I remember this cannon from the first dive, and I've actually got photos of it with rope wrapped around it. The rope is no longer here, so I once again speculate that it's been dragged off somehow, and that is what may have removed the concretion. I'm still moving around the top of the mound. I think we may have seen some of this wood before, and I have to say it's very difficult to orientate yourself on a wreck like this, and that's why when you see the map of where I actually went on the wreck, it does seem as though I went round in circles quite a lot, and that's almost certainly because probably I did. What am I doing? I guess I'm just looking for anything interesting that I want to video, but I do have a specific mission that I need to achieve, and the first part of it is finding this thing here. This is a big, probably cauldron, I guess, the sort of thing maybe that they would have cooked food and meals in. At the moment, it's merely a home to lots and lots of conger eels. Now this wasn't in this position when I did the last dive. I estimate it's about 10, maybe 15 metres away in a completely different position, and also in a completely different orientation. Once again, I take the view that this has been moved somehow, whether it was by the current or whether it was by some sort of man-made activity. I've got no idea at all. But there's another gun, and once again, loads of fish around it. I think those are probably pouting, but that's not really my forte. a load more guns. Just incredible how many of these things there are down there. HMS Victory, when it sank, was carrying approximately 100 guns of different calibers. These ones here are the largest of them, I think. You can also see the beautiful brass lifting dolphins that are on the top of them, and those would be how the guns would have been moved backwards and forwards, taken on or off the ship, and moved round inside it. You also probably got a glimpse of another diver. Everybody else is just down here marvelling at the incredible amount of stuff there is on a shipwreck that is 300 years old. One of the interesting things with HMS Victory is that this is a ship with 1,150 dead sailors on it. You would imagine that the Royal Navy would be interested in commemorating those sailors and protecting the wreck in the same way that they do with other ships where there's been large losses of life, such as HMS Royal Oak in Scapa Flow. Yet there's nothing to stop anybody from coming and diving HMS Victory as we are today. There's no special protections applied to it or restrictions in any way. In fact, it's almost as though the Royal Navy want to forget that this shipwreck exists. To make matters worse, the Royal Navy no longer own it, and that makes it almost unique amongst naval shipwrecks. In 2012, the Ministry of Defence transferred ownership of HMS Victory to the Maritime Heritage Foundation, which, as far as I can tell, the only thing it does is to study HMS Victory, and it's not really clear to me whether any of that happens anymore. You can visit the website, which doesn't look as though it's been updated for a very long time. So it's a really bizarre position for what should be a really important national wreck. Or at least I feel it should be an important national wreck, given how many people lost their lives when it vanished during that storm in 1744. I look at the way that other shipwrecks are commemorated and cherished. Things like the Mary Rose, for instance. Even HMS London in the Thames. Yet here, an equally important wreck, arguably more important wreck, is just completely ignored and is at the mercy of whatever is happening in the middle of the English Channel. Anyway, back to the diving. You can see I've been scootering around looking for other interesting objects. There's a kind of local cat shark / dogfish just back there. And then there's this kind of stuff everywhere. You kind of feel that if you could just get below the sand, there'd be so many interesting things there. And of course, the famous thing that everyone's always suggested is that HMS Victory was carrying a large amount of gold. It was the flagship of the fleet, and that should be somewhere, unless of course someone's already had it. Who knows? One of the other interesting things about HMS Victory is that it was sunk while it was returning from the epically named War of Jenkin's Ear, which is also known as the Spanish War of Succession. The thing that kicked it off was a pirate in the Caribbean who was faced justice from the Spanish and ended up having his ear cut off. We moved to protect someone that we saw as one of our captains, although obviously it was just a casus belli, and that's what kicked off the war. The fleet was blockading ports in Spain when a large gale kicked up, and HMS Victory, along with the rest of the fleet, was making a run back to safety. It never got there, and nobody knew what happened to it for the 300 years until it was found by Odyssey. One of the interesting things is that they thought that Victory was wrecked off the Channel Islands, and the lighthouse keeper in one of the Channel Islands was actually court-martialed for failing to do his job of lighting the lighthouse. I think the good news is that we can now exonerate that individual and say that he was not guilty. Mind you, it's probably a bit late for him, and I can't imagine that he cares, but at least justice has been done. So this is where I am now, and the reason I'm here is because I'm looking for two particular guns that I know are in this area. And the reason I'm looking for them is because on the first dive I remember that I saw a skull here. These are the two guns. I remember them really well. They're so photogenic. You can see the crest there on the top of one of them, and the area where you'll see me shining my torch just to the left hand side. That's where I saw the skull and what I think may well be a leg bone. But as I look now, I can see that they're not there. So the question is, what's happened to them? Where have they gone? And unfortunately, it's another one of those things that I don't have a good answer to. I'm continuing to move around the wreck, and as you can see here, more guns. There's a big one and two smaller ones. The smaller one has become a nice little home for a conger eel. The bigger one, once again, concretion removed on the bottom of it. There's also a few lifting strops there in the middle of the picture. Were they associated with this gun? Who knows, but it would seem odd for them just to have ended up there by themselves. There's another gun, once again buried. And this one here, the jauntily angled one, we've seen before. Up in front of me there, I can see somebody with a couple of video lights. Almost certainly that's Rick, who does stills photos, and some of his stills photos have been used during this video. I can actually see though that he's put a video light on the ground, which means that he's found a gun that he particularly likes and he's taking some arty images of it. I like being photographed, so I'm going to go up there and I'm going to illuminate the wreck for him and try to get in some of his photos. And as you'll see, this works out very well for me. Before I do that though, quickly video whatever that thing is there. Maybe a millstone or a grinding stone. Once again, I'm not really an expert, but that would seem like a logical thing for a ship like HMS Victory to have on board. Up in front of me you can see that video light has been resting on the seabed. I'm going to go up there and I'm going to use my lights to illuminate the cannon, which will help Rick get a decent photo. I'm also going to try and remain completely static, which once again will help him take a photo. I actually decide that I need to be a bit closer in so that I appear better in the photo, and you'll see I'm going to move forward shortly and get into position for his photo. I'm sure it goes without saying that taking photographs at this kind of depth is a really challenging thing to do, and some of the photos that Rick produces are absolutely stunning. Anybody who follows him on social media will know that. It's also worth saying that if you ever dive with a photographer, it's worth thinking about the kind of challenges that they face. So using your lights to illuminate suitable subjects and then staying still to give them enough time to get into position, those are things that they really value. Having said that, you don't want to spend too long there because you're just going to waste your dive. So I hope Rick's got the photo and I'm going to move off. As it happens, it's an absolutely stunning photo that has won awards in photographic competitions, and I've got a copy of it adorning the wall of my study. I'd just like to say thank you very much to Rick for giving me permission to use this stunning photo and also allowing me to print a copy and stick it up on the wall of my study. Meanwhile, back in the dive, I'm on the move again. I've still got the other part of my mission to do. We know from multi-beam that there are some objects to the west of the wreck, and the reason that my location is being tracked, and the second part of my mission, is to go and investigate what these objects are. I'm going to start with the double cannons that I saw at the beginning, and then move out to the west from there, and that's what you'll see me do. I'm going to drop onto the completely flat seabed, i.e. I'm not on the mound anymore, and I'm heading west using my compass. It's completely flat seabed, as you can see. This isn't part of the wreck. This isn't part of the wreck mound. So there's no reason why there should be any objects over here. As I head out, you can see that I'm using my torch on my left hand to scan around and try and spot these things that we've seen on the multi-beam. So far there's nothing, and I'm starting to get a bit concerned that I might be a bit far away from the mound. After all, I do need to get back to it because that's where the shot line is, and that's where my strobes are, and that's my route home. And then you've probably just seen it pop into view, a cannon. It's a long way from the mound, and there's actually another one there in the gloom just further on from it. So these are the smaller cannon though. Once again you'll see that they're covered in lifting strops. They'll also have the concretion removed, and they're in completely the wrong place. There's no reason at all for them to be here. As you'll see, I'm going to move along, and they're literally in a line, one after the other. Somebody and something has moved these and put them here. The reason I'm pausing at the moment is to show clearly the lifting strops, both the ones that are on the cannon and the remnants of other ones that are off to the side of it. Here's another smaller cannon, once again lifting strop on there. It must have been here a while for that thing to grow on it. So there was 3, and I'm starting to have a look around, see if there's any more. Not sure what that is. Maybe a bit of ballast or something from the wreck, maybe that fell off. I'm looking around. I kind of sense there must be more cannon, but I can't see any at the moment. I'm continuing to look round. Fish are always an interesting sign. They normally hang around wreckage. Maybe there's a few more fish. That'll be where the cannons are. And there you go, boomf. Another cannon. Once again, where no cannon should be. Carrying on my search, looking around for more. In fact, there's 2 cannon there, isn't there? Both of the smaller sort. One on the right, one on the left. Definitely lifting strops on the left one, and maybe there are remnants of a lifting strop on the right hand one, just where that conger eel is. Oh, in fact, there's loads of cannons here. There's another one to the left, another one in front, and another one in front of that. Once again, all with lifting strops on. I've lost track of the number of cannons I've found here that have been moved off the wreck site, but it's a lot. This has taken somebody a serious amount of time and effort to do this. I can't believe it's been done by divers. It simply wouldn't be possible. So this has been done mechanically, maybe with a remote operated vehicle. That would be my best guess. Once again, looking in front here, is there another couple of cannons here? Yes, there are. Once again, the smaller ones, covered in lifting strops. They've been moved here. Has to be. Am I into double figures now? I think I probably am. There's another one. There is lots and lots of cannons here, all with lifting strops, all not on the wreck site. So where am I on my chart? Well, somewhere near where that star is. As you can see, I'm a long way off the wreck mound in an area of flat seabed. I came out on the top one of those dotted lines. I've jinked around a bit, and then I'm going to come back in on the bottom dotted line, which will take me back eventually to where the shot is. In the meantime though, there's clearly some more cannons to be seen. Here you go, you can see these. Lifting strops, concretion removed, wrong place. Exactly what we've been seeing all the way through this excursion off the mound. These may be cannons that I've seen before. I'm not 100% certain. All we can say is that there's well into double figures. Possibly, getting as many as 20 that have been moved off the wreck site. Why have they been moved off the wreck site? Well, I don't know. All I can do is speculate that somebody was preparing them, almost certainly to be lifted and recovered up to the surface. That's the only thing I can think of. Who was that? Well, Once again, it's not possible to say with any certainty, but I would imagine it's somebody with a financial interest in getting them to the surface. I've spotted something else interesting here. No idea what it is. Possibly iron, maybe something to do with the mast. I've no idea. And as you can see here, I'm going to start to come back up onto the mound, starting to see sort of the bottoms changing. It's no longer just sandy, we're starting to get all this ballast and other bits and pieces. Nice little crayfish off to the right hand side, and there's the shot. You probably remember that from earlier on in the video. And we're back into the bigger cannons, which don't tend to have been moved off the wreck site. Loads of wood, other bits and pieces. A diver in front of me there. I think he's got a lobster or a crayfish in there. I'm sure that'll make a nice dinner for him. Going back to the War of Jenkin's Ear, HMS Victory at the time was commanded by Admiral Siir John Balchen. At the time he died, he was 74 years old and the third highest ranking officer in the Royal Navy. So I think it just emphasises what an important ship HMS Victory was at the time and how keenly its loss must have been felt to the Royal Navy. It's also worth highlighting that at the time HMS Victory was one of the most technologically advanced ships in the world, although there had been problems bringing it into service, where there'd been an argument between the Navy and the master shipwright who had constructed her. The Navy had felt it was insufficiently seaworthy and had sent it back a number of times to have modifications. Ultimately though, they accepted it into service, and only a few years later it vanished during the storm of 1744. So perhaps they were right after all. As you can see, there's all sorts of things on the seabed. I've no idea what that thing I've just been looking at is. Was it something to do with the original wreck? Is it something else that's found its way down there? I have no idea. Here's another thing here. Frankly, you'd love to be able to dig this stuff up and just have a look at it to see. Another cat shark / dogfish there, depending on what you want to call it. And here we are, just more ballast, more wood. I mean, for me it's incredible in particular that the wood has managed to survive this long underwater. The only thing I can suggest is that it's continuously being covered and uncovered by sand. That, as far as I can tell, is the only way to preserve it. What I'm doing here is I'm slightly off the wreck site. I'm just travelling around looking to see if I can find other bits and pieces. In front of me you can see there's another diver with their torch, no doubt trying to do the same thing as me. I already mentioned how difficult it is to navigate around a wreck like HMS Victory. There simply aren't the features that you can use to identify where you are that there are on a normal wreck. There's no nice straight lines for the side, there's no prominent engine or boilers, there's no bow, there's no anchors, there's none of that sort of stuff. There's just guns and ballast and wood and bits and pieces scattered all over the place. Trying to get it into your head on a relatively short dive is a real challenge. And I have to say, even though I've done 2 dives on it, I still don't feel that I know the wreck particularly well. I can't find my way easily from one object to the other. I just have to do what I'm doing here, which is to scoot around and hopefully hit upon something that I recognise. There you go, clearly not dive very much. Crayfish is very relaxed. Fortunately, I'm not hungry, so I leave it be. I'm just cruising around. There's another gun there. You can see the trunnion just on the side, sticking out of the sand. I don't think I've seen this gun before. More guns over here. It's just incredible. I think I've mentioned already that there is 100 guns on HMS Victory, supposedly. And I don't think I've seen anywhere near that number. Maybe 20 or so off to the side, and then maybe another 30 or so on the wreck. Oh, lovely there. Free swimming conger eel. That's very nice. Another good sign that the wreck isn't dived very often. More guns. You know, these are absolute beauties, aren't they? I love the dolphins. I love the crests on them. They are so spectacular. And HMS Victory was the last first-rate ship of the line to be built entirely with bronze cannons. If you go into HMS Victory in Portsmouth, you'll see that the cannons are actually iron, and the reason is because bronze cannons, although better in terms of they don't corrode or anything, they're far more expensive to build, and therefore the Navy, in the interest of cost saving, built ships after this HMS Victory with iron cannons to save money. Now I'm getting to the end of my dive here. You can see I'm back at the shot. You can see there's a couple of divers on the shot line. One of them's Rick, the photographer, and these guys are also completing their dive. They're all heading back up, and we're starting to say goodbye to another fantastic dive on HMS Victory. Next thing to do is get my strobes, which means I'm going to let the scooter dangle in the water, but actually you get a nice bit of video showing the wreck in kind of plan view, and you can see the other divers there as well. So that's my dive on HMS Victory. It's an absolute privilege to dive a wreck like this. There is nowhere else in the world that you can dive a Royal Navy first-rate ship of the line. There's nowhere where you can see that number of Royal Navy bronze cannons, and there's nowhere where you can dive knowing that there's 1,100 dead sailors in the local vicinity. And that is probably the thing that I'm going to leave you with. Just to remember that this is a grave site, and we should all think about the poor sailors who lost their lives 300 years ago in what must have been horrendous storm conditions. Well, I hope you've enjoyed my video. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you've learned a lot about HMS Victory, and I hope that you'll have a look at some of my other videos. There's more great dives, more interesting stories. Please feel free to like this one, view some of the others, leave a comment, subscribe, tell your friends, and all those other good things. Thank you very much.